If you've watched the Meidas Touch Network, you know this guy's work. It's terrific. He happens to be one of my favorite people alive also. And he's certainly going away, my favorite Britisher. And there's a certain wondrous quality to listening to him speak the King's English, don't you think, Kim? On your feet, a warm Mark Thompson Sho welcome. Here he is. Anthony Davis, everyone. Yes. Look at you, you sexy fool. Oh, my God.
Every time. Every time.
Yeah, terrific. The more uncomfortable I can make you, the happier I am.
Keep going.
All right. So I am really anxious and haven't had a chance to in any way visit with you about what's happened with the American involvement in the Israeli-Iran conflict. Iran, I was making the point in the first hour, and I've made the point repeatedly, at a moment in their history, recent history, where their military forces are depleted, their surrogates are gone or also depleted, the Hezbollahs, the Houthis, the Syrias of the world. And so it was an opportunity that I think the Israelis identified. But to see the Americans throw in with that, with this huge move of taking out, I use it in quotes, these nuclear sites. I wonder if you could speak to the situation in the region and how you squared all of that.
Well, it should never have happened, Mark. I suppose we could start there. You know, Donald Trump didn't even really make a case for this, did he? He claimed that there was a risk of a threat from Iran, but because he needs something to go to war with. You can't just go on a whim. You need congressional approval. Well, I've been thinking about this a lot. He thinks he is Congress because he has the House and the Senate. He thinks that he is Congress. And so therefore you're kind of stuck in a situation where you're dealing with somebody who is completely lawless. Now, we've seen this in California with people being snatched off the street and not given due process, people who have never committed a crime. So it's clear that this is very much a lawless administration, whether it be through immigration or now when it comes to going to war with other nations. And so we have to be very, very clear about what is happening here. This is just another attempt, in my opinion, timing-wise, to distract from his big, beautiful bill. This is really, imagine how insane you need to be to create a diversion for a domestic policy like a budget to go to war with another nation that was not threatening you directly. That is really what we're dealing with here. He is, he is a confidence trickster. This is the stuff that he knows how to do. And so everything is emotional blackmail or physical blackmail. And we've seen this with NATO, about paying 5%. You've got to pay 5% of your GDP, or else, or I'll send the Russians on to you. This is the language. I described him in a posting earlier as a Costco mob boss. That's what we're dealing with, a Costco mob boss.
And you mean Costco because you're saying sort of a low rent, right?
Yeah, it's like, pile it high, sell it cheap kind of thing, And I suppose, that's kind of what we're dealing with.
It's not certainly the first situation in which we'd seen sort of a wag the dog moment, which is what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
With a military confrontation that's designed to distract. It's interesting to me that you chose the big, beautiful bill as the thing that he wanted to distract from. I thought perhaps it would be the highly controversial immigration raids that
it could be a number of things, Mark, let's be honest.
It could be a number of things.
Right.
But whatever, you're seeing this as first a political move and secondarily something that is of interest to him in terms of stabilizing the region or balancing the region?
Nothing. He doesn't even know what any of that stuff means. He was asked on Air Force One last night, does this change things regarding Article 5 of the NATO agreement? And he didn't know what it was. He projected and he goes, well, Article 5 could, mean any number of things. It's like, no, Article 5 is one thing. You attack one country in NATO, you attack us all. It's not complicated. But
this was a great moment, not to break him, but I agree, and thank you for reminding me. I'd forgotten about it. He said, I certainly have some thoughts about that, but I'm not going to share them in the back of a plane. It was like, yeah, because you don't know what anybody's talking about it when
you
it
don't
comes
know anything. So he doesn't know about Iran. He doesn't know about the culture. He doesn't know about the Ayatollah. He doesn't know how Iranians feel about the rule there, in the same way that George W. Bush didn't really know much about Iraq or Afghanistan. And, it reminded me last night when Trump made his announcement and several posts, what a great success. It reminded me, as I'm sure it did you, of George W. Was he in a tank?
No, mission accomplished was done on
mission accomplished.
Aircraft carrier.
Aircraft carrier, that's right. And I was just like, man, if only American presidents would learn from history. But Trump doesn't know history. So we're dealing with a kind of Neanderthal man, with an imbecile who's been given the nuclear codes. Everybody better run for cover. And, I went on a British radio station last night and tried to explain this, and they find it all very jovial because they know that he is a joke president. But the problem with that is that you end up laughing off genocide. You end up laughing off a kind of a nuclear holocaust. How often can you kind of laugh it off before you realize that this is deadly serious? And I tried to make that point with the host. I was like, this really isn't very funny, because when you send someone like Trump into the Middle East as a distraction for domestic policy and let him just kind of, all he could talk about was the pilots flying the B-2 bombers. Like, again, it just shows no understanding of, A, the military are trained to do their jobs. You don't congratulate the bombers. That's their job. Of course they're going to get direct hits. That's what they're trained for. Talk about the policy. Talk about the effect on geopolitics. Talk about the liberating the people of Iran. Talk about something. Don't kind of name 6 pilots. It was just so weird. And so this is the point that I try to make, is that it is very dangerous giving somebody like Trump all of these toys to play with. This is not going to end well. And even though the ceasefire seems to be holding now, it's Tuesday evening in Iran and in Israel. We've been in this situation so many times before. This conflict could be back up and running within 48 hours. And Trump will be even more angry that he may use the F word again whilst on camera.
Well, I really like the fact that you've talked about 2 things. A, the bomber pilots, he was wrapping himself in because it deflects from the rest of what you're talking about, right? You can't criticize the policy because, as he said, and he accused CNN and MSNBC and the media, the fake media, of in some way smearing the reputation of the pilots. He said, you owe an apology to those pilots of those B-2 bombers. That was a way of, I thought, deflecting the entire thing in an aggressive way. It was a Trump move,
But he cares nothing for service personnel. Otherwise, he'd be doing more for veterans.
No, they're
so
prompt. They're
in this
props.
moment,
They're
it doesn't
absolutely
make any sense.
props. Yeah.
All props.
Yeah. But you're so right about your broader point, which is because he is a cartoonish character, he is vapid and he is impulsive and he'll say anything. He becomes something that you can make fun of, but in the making fun of him, you take the teeth out of how deadly serious everything is. I love that you made that point.
I wrote a piece about this, saying that American media is not set up to deal with an authoritarian takeover of government, because morning news is designed to be uplifting and joyful. Hey, good morning, what's going on, Late night is designed to be comedic and satirical. And so we're left with this kind of vacuum of in American media, where the idea of actually taking something so seriously and waking up in the morning, can you imagine like a morning crew on a radio or TV channel being like, good morning, we have been taken over by an authoritarian dictator. People are being snatched off the streets of America, and it is a very dark day for the United States. They wouldn't dream of it. It goes against the script.
Now here's Al with the weather. Right.
And now here's Mark Thompson with the weather.
Yeah. It's a remarkable thing. You're right. In a way, the media, I always talk about how critical the media is, because the media dictates the narrative. If you can capture the media messaging, which is something Trump and his people are so very good. The GOP, I think, are excellent at capturing the messaging. They scream it from the rooftops. And of course, they have the big messaging propaganda machine of Fox News Channel, which doesn't hurt. But you can influence thinking. And it's but this is fascinating what you're saying. You're saying essentially the frustration the media has is a reflection of the way they're set up. They're just not set up to cover this kind of thing.
No, I mean, it's a little bit like, when, say, the Macy's parade happens every year. They don't come up with a new way of covering the Macy's Christmas parades, do they? They cover it the same way as they did last year. Okay, we're going to have a camera here and on this street, and there's one camera that's going to twist and turn and follow the parade when it does this, and then you're going to have the host standing here, and they're going to do an opening monologue here. It's like the camera script. It's down. And so for me as a non-American, coming to this country and seeing this media landscape that is so locked down with its production, because, the theatricality of it, I love it. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's part of the reason why I want to live here, because it is so different to what I'm used to in Europe. But in Europe, we had Winston Churchill making a speech, "We will fight them on the beaches." I mean, that's our, that's how our news has kind of evolved. And so, British news, I'm sure you know this, but British news is always sad story, bad story, sad story, bad story. And then we have a ... and finally. And then after the words "and finally," we have a slightly uplifting story, which is that a cat's been rescued from a tree. Just so that we don't leave the public with a kind of a depression that they're going to have to be medicated for. So that's how we do the news in England, because the news invariably is sad and bad. And I just don't see that here. I see it being covered in a jovial way. And the fact that Trump said the F word on camera in front of, the plane and the whole thing, as the president, he wasn't like, okay, he wasn't wearing his signature red tie. He was wearing an open shirt. He had his tie in his hand. But that doesn't mean he's off duty, for goodness sake. The world is watching the President of the United States fall apart. Falling apart. If you can't control your language, he's furious. He's furious with Netanyahu because he's basically been, he's been sent up the river. He's furious with Iran, not that he had much of a relationship with them in the first place, and he feels betrayed. And that's why he's now swearing on television.
Randy was asking you, when do you think he'll be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize?
Friday.
Yeah, there you go, Randy.
And they've got a whole ceremony planned for TV, and it's going to be fantastic. And if you don't get the announcer job, I'll be very upset.
Yeah, I mean, yet another big Trump event. I didn't even get to audition for the voiceover on it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the aftermath and what's happening in America, because I'd suggest to you the authoritarian creep has made a significant inroad in most of the ways in which it needs to. I see even the elections as being on some level influenced by the presence of troops, of the normalization of the presence of military on American streets. It's being road tested or perhaps perfected in Los Angeles. He's talked about the fact that he wants to go after Democratic cities where they've lost control. Kristi Noem talks about liberating Los Angeles from the socialist mayor, et cetera. I worry because, as I say, I think this is a kind of despotism in waiting that isn't really waiting anymore.
I was gonna correct you and say, what do you mean in waiting? We're already here, but you corrected yourself. We're already here. It's already arrived. We just don't really feel it because, as we just discussed, the news carries on. America carries on. And there is this kind of desire to ignore the worst of it. But the reality is the worst of it is here. Now, the people that control the media are invariably white and wealthy, and therefore these things don't matter to them. But if you are Puerto Rican, or if you are Mexican, or if you are of a color or skin pigmentation that does not fit, or you have a Gonzalez, or you have the wrong surname, then you're in hiding right now in Los Angeles, Mark. I mean, people are not out. There are not people selling fruit on the streets. There are people whose gardens are not being cleaned because the contractors are staying home for fear of being snatched. That's the reality. And so, in answer to your question, though, I don't actually think much of this is about immigration. I think this is more about getting control of democratic states. Because going forward, I think Trump's plan is to win California with Republicans. I think the reason that he is trying to take down Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and describe them as incompetent when they are entirely competent is all part of the plan, the Project 2025 plan, which is to slowly but surely get rid of any kind of democratic strongholds and allow these kind of far-right Christian nationalist MAGA Republicans to control America. So there is no pushback. It's all part of the authoritarian takeover. So, forget any money for the wildfires in California. Forget FEMA money. I mean, he's shutting FEMA down after hurricane season, which they didn't know was hurricane season. But, that's not the point. The reason for shutting FEMA down is because he wants to be in control of who gets what. And if it's being done by an independent government department or non-governmental department, then he doesn't get to have people suck up to him. And so Newsom isn't sucking up to him. No money for the California wildfires. And, climate change is not stopping anytime soon. And, this heat dome that we're experiencing at the moment, that New York is experiencing, and hopefully not stopping too many people from voting for mayor, is part of the problem, isn't it? Again, it's a bit like not talking about authoritarianism. The media doesn't talk about climate change because they fear it is too political. So you've got two of the biggest issues in America's history right now, or world history even. You've got the rise of authoritarianism in the West and fascism, and the impending climate crisis, which is also upon us, and neither of them are being discussed by American media in any kind of urgency. And that is very worrying.
It's even worse than that because you have an administration that's actively, as far as climate change is concerned, and just as far as, even if you forget about climate change, you just talk about the environment.
Yes.
As far as pollutants are concerned in the air, water, and
soil.
They're
making it worse.
It's a green light. They're literally dismantling all regulations when it comes to pollutants that are permitted in the air, water, and soil. It's incredible, absolutely extraordinary. So I keep coming around to the fact that we find ourselves in this predicament. And you're right, there's a normalization bias, I think, that the media has. And they have only so many moves to cover these guys. And so they're using the tried and true moves. Is there a way to push back? I mean, I know, I watch your Meidas Touch stuff, and I love it. I love your long-form conversations. And with your lawyer, I always forget his name, but he's
Ron
very good.
Filikowski.
Yeah, and I always felt as though, and we've made the point that really the last challenge to the progress of this authoritarian creep was the courts. Yes. Now it appears that the courts have relented, and particularly in the way that they are allowing this administration to deport people who've come to this country to countries that they didn't come from. I mean, when you're going to take some guy who came from Mexico and you're going to deport him to South Sudan.
Yeah.
And that's kidnapping. I mean, that's human trafficking.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unconscionable, and it's just been okayed by the courts.
Correct, because Trump controls the courts in the same way that he controls the House and the Senate, and he controls the judiciary. And this is why the system, you and I have spoken before about how it never made any sense to me that judges are elected. They're political judges. They have to tell you which side they're on, and they get elected by. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the judiciary should be completely independent, as it is in most other countries. And yet, for some reason here, the judges are just politicians, as I see it.
Remind us how they do it in England.
Well, they have a panel that is a non-political panel that is, organized by the government, and very experienced people, former judiciary and various people from walks of life are on this panel, and they select the judges. And that's just how it's done. I mean, it's a non-partisan process.
Are the appointments to that panel, though, political? I mean, or you're saying there is constantly review to make certain that there is a representation across the board?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's not unusual. Like the idea that you would have judges kind of even mayors being political is a bit of a new one on me as well. I mean, we haven't had mayors in London for very long, only for about 15 years, 20 years maybe. But prior to that, we didn't really have mayors. But I find it very interesting too, looking at the way that it's all about money here. It's all about fundraising. And if there's enough money in the pot, then your chances of winning are much higher.
Well, that's the real issue. I suggest that there are politics informing most every position of power. In some way. You can avoid the word politics and say they're philosophies of government, or you can sort of repackage it, but in a way it's politics. But what you've just noted, I think, is the critical thing, which is that there is money that is streaming through American politics and has been legalized to stream through American politics, and that has destroyed everything because it's given the people with the most money the most power.
Yeah, and I mean, it all hinged on one legal case, didn't it, ultimately? And from that moment on, everything changed. And here we are. And I think that, that landmark ruling a couple of days ago from the Supreme Court about, allowing people to be, as you say, kidnapped and taken. I mean, he was looking at prisons in Lebanon. I mean, places that, he can get a better deal on. I mean, how you cannot equate that to, or how one cannot equate that to the Nazis in concentration camps, I have no idea. That's basically what it is. And Kristi Noem was very happy to stand in front of that El Salvadorian one with her cosplay and pose. They love it. This is what we have to remember, Mark, is that for you and I, it might seem insane. And for a lot of people in America, certainly 70-odd million, they think it's wonderful. Like, finally. And it's all baked into the Great Replacement theory and years of systemic racism, and it's all finally kind of coming to a head. But they're going to realize when there's no food to eat in about 6 months' time that actually it was probably not a very good idea to deport all the people that do the jobs that American people don't want to do.
It's such a troubling image. I wonder at what point the imagery associated with this will become so difficult to stomach for Americans that it will stop or be modified. Tony, I know we only have him for another minute, but can you play? Is Tony still with us or not? I think there he is. Tony, can you play for Anthony Davis a little bit of the car wash sequence? This abduction of these people is so ugly that I'm suggesting that this imagery really may start to break back against them, Anthony. I don't know, but I mean, it sure does seem as though it's powerful. Here's a little bit, and then I'll let you go. This is a car wash.
No tiene que contestar nada.
No tiene que contestar nada. Anything is what she's saying in Spanish.
What are you guys doing? No tiene que contestarle nada.
What are you guys doing?
Look at him, he's got a little
badge. Okay, you need to identify yourself.
Hand and a little
you need to identify yourself.
Cleaner.
No, you need to identify yourself.
Meantime, the guys who are, for people who are just listening, the guys who are there, these aren't feds. These are guys who just slap on some sheriff backpack type thing. It looks like they're wearing these little backpacks. They're bounty hunters or something. There are no badge numbers. There's no official anything here.
We didn't see any of that shit. We didn't see any
we don't even know, by the way, there might be a mix of both, of bounty hunters and official feds, but we don't know. But look at this poor man standing there. I mean, to me, he's trying to make an honest living here, there with the cleaning supplies in his hand. To me, it's heartbreaking. You can stop. I just want to show him a little bit of it.
This is going to become the biggest story in America in the coming weeks. The unmasking of these so-called ICE personnel. It's going to be the biggest story in America when we discover that a lot of them are vigilantes, that they are, white supremacists. They are people who are, because, there was a bill in Missouri that was it didn't pass, but the plan there was to pay bounty hunters $1,000 to bring someone in and another $1,000 if they got deported. And they literally were inviting people, and so many of these Republican, these kind of far-right, let's call them January 6ers for want of a better phrase, because they've all obviously been pardoned and are undoubtedly Trump's new militia. They own these outfits. They own these weapons. They're already planning for this day. They have been for decades. And, I get serious Ahmaud Arbery vibes. You remember his story? The guy was out running, young, fit, handsome black man, running, just taking his daily exercise, and 3 ugly white men show up in a truck and they lynch him and they execute him at the side of the road. And they thought they were doing good. They thought they were doing work as a kind of proxy for the local sheriff's department. We got another one. They're in prison now. He lost his life. And so this is what we're starting to see, is that firstly, ICE have burned through their budget already. We know that. They're spending money like you wouldn't believe. What are they spending that money on? They certainly aren't spending it on official vehicles. I mean, some of these cars I've been seeing, they've got, they're in the wrong state. They've got plates from Nevada when they're in California. They've got Arizona when they're in Nevada. Like, these are just, and they don't even look like military or police or federal vehicles.
Vigilantes. They're vigilantes.
They're vigilantes. And so when this story breaks, I'm convinced that this is going to hopefully be a turning point, that these are just Trump's henchmen, surrogates, some of whom are federal agents. But have you noticed? They're not very fit, these people. A lot of them, I don't want to fat shame anybody, but a lot of them are bursting out of their clothes. They clearly wouldn't be able to run after anybody. So what they do is they jump on people, get them on the ground and beat them in the head. That is not how you make an arrest. It simply isn't.
No, these are people who didn't receive any training, any federal training, any federal directives. They are opportunists. There are those who are just doing this stuff to rip people off. There's been a case of sexual assault associated with this. It's I hope, as you have said, it becomes the biggest story, because to me,
it needs to. Yeah.
It is immoral in a profoundly immoral way, and I am incensed by it, and it turns my stomach to see so much of this population. They are here. They are productive. They've been here decades, many of them paying taxes, not getting many of the benefits that citizens get. They're certainly not voting. And that, to me, turns my stomach to see them treated this way. And now, as we've said, kidnapped or put in what the new American gulags will be, that alligator place down in Florida that they just greenlit. It's troubling in the extreme. Thank you, Anthony Davis. Yeah.
As an immigrant, I would just say finally that, when you're lucky enough to come to America and you get your paperwork and you finally kind of managed to jump through all the hoops and pay the fees and go for the interviews at the consular and all that, all the work, the first thing you want to do is abide by the rules of your visa. You don't break the law. You don't speed. You don't play with your phone while you're driving. You pay your taxes. You show up to your immigration hearings. And you keep yourself on the straight and narrow. And that's why, for me, as an immigrant, the idea that immigrants are being painted as drug dealers and murderers and rapists and coming from mental institutions, it just doesn't make any sense. That is not what is in the soul and the hearts of people who are seeking a better life in the former free world.
So true. Yet it's been cast in exactly the opposite way, that they're here to perpetuate violence and to commit crimes. As to who they are, Florida gets federal funds to build immigration detention sites, including Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Thank you for that, Kim. Those are cops, man, says C. Sparrow. Stop lying. They might be cops, they might not be. We don't know whether they're cops or not, C. Sparrow. They don't identify themselves. They have no public markings. Usually cops have a badge number. There isn't this whole playing hide with the football when it comes to identification if you're a legitimate law enforcement official. So
well, look at what happened at Dodger Stadium. You know, these people were turned away, and there was a video circulating this morning of a woman basically shouting, you know, identify yourself, show me your badges, show me your faces. She then films the license plate on the vehicle, and eventually they leave because they know that they are, you know, they're beyond their jurisdiction.
Sure. If they were actually legitimate police officers or ICE agents, they would have warrants to enter the premises. They didn't. Right. Last thing, Chaplain Fred says, I told you about how much an arrest is, Mark. It's so sickening. Yeah, there's supposedly bounties on these people, $1,000 to $2,000 per head. And I think there's an upgrade, supposedly, if they are deported ultimately. I mean, it's pretty loathsome, you know. You're the best to stay late with us. Thank you. Anthony Davis can be found on the Meidas Touch Network. He has many shows. Google him, find him, enjoy him. It's a really special thing that you are producing the stuff that you produce. You know, I think you're just a really gifted mind on all of this. So, yeah, look at this. Citizen Morgan agrees. A lot of love for Anthony Davis. So Google it. Yeah, Google Anthony and enjoy him.
If you Google me, you'll get a basketball player from the Lakers. So
that's right. I forgot. There is another Anthony Davis.
There is, yes, an imposter.
Anthony Davis fan here says zero sum.
Oh, that's kind.
Love his show, says Man from the West. Right on, my friend.
America,
and you're still my favorite Britisher.
Let's make that
all the best, and thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Anthony
Thanks,
Davis.
Mark. All the best.
Love it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.